Okay, so I'm here to explain what happens when Jupiter goes into the fourth house. And it's a great place for Jupiter to be in. Now, what is the fourth house? The fourth house represents indoor dwellings, the relationship with the mother, the household that you came from. It can represent how you'll be when you move out and have your own house, how you might run your household, how you might run your family. It can represent schools and colleges and education, because those are indoor dwellings and you're being nurtured mentally. This is a house that's originally by Cancer and the moon. And Jupiter represents divine knowledge, wisdom. It's a guru, it's a sage, it's a monk, it's a preacher. It's philosophical. You know, a well-placed Jupiter can make you great at astrology and mysticism and tarot and Reiki and all that good stuff. Jupiter can represent a husband in a woman's birth chart. Now, what happens when Jupiter goes to the fourth house? Now, Jupiter does good in the fourth house because it's sitting in the house of the sign that is exalted in, which is Cancer. And I'll make a different video of that on another day of why Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Because they all tie together, really. But I don't want to make this video fucking 20 minutes long explaining why Jupiter is exalted in Cancer and does good in the fourth house. I'm just trying to the best of my ability, and stick to why Jupiter does good in the fourth house. When we think of Jupiter, we think of those things that I just said. Philosophical, spiritual, monk, guru, Aang from the last Avatar, the last Airbender, or a preacher at our church, or a sage, or somebody who's just meditating and stuff. But I guess in America, or the modernized version of Jupiter would be that religious family, that two-parent household. It doesn't have to be a two-parent household. Just painting a picture for you. It would be that two-parent household who is very religious. They go to church faithfully every Sunday. They take the kids, whatever, the Bible study. You know, stereotypically or typically, Jupiter is, like I said, that sage, that guru, that monk, that preacher. Is T.D. Jakes. They might renounce the material world. They might not be married and whatnot. But a real spiritual person, a real strong Jupiterian person, is someone who is able to have, who's able to be married to God and be married to their wife or their spouse, into their family. It's someone who's committed to both. It's easy to do them separately, but it's hard to be strongly, you know, attached to God and do your pilgrimages and your rituals and take care of the family. It's hard to do them both, and I can list a plethora of examples why. And that is why Jupiter sort of like does real good in the fourth house. Because like I said, it takes a strong spiritual person to be faithful to their spouse, raise their kids, tackle and deal with the problems in the everyday world, and still keep up their spiritual routine, still be an astrologer, still meditate, still pray. You see, Jupiter in the fourth house, that's like a person that's someone that the average, regular, everyday Joe will probably be more willing and accepting of taking, you know, advice from. Because that spiritual person, that sage, that monk in a cave, that person who's real isolated and lives somewhere real remote, they probably don't deal with the everyday problems that a regular person deal with. They don't have no family. They don't have no bills. They live a very low-cost, conservative life. So they can give you great advice probably for the things that you're going through, but it'll probably tend to fall on deaf ears for the average Joe, because they be like, this person doesn't have to deal with what I'm going through. I'm not listening to this crazy person meditating. But that Jupiterian person, that person who works that Jupiter in the fourth house person, that person who works that 9-to-5 job, who's been with their girlfriend or their boyfriend for a long time and has kids, and they, you know, they still meditate and they be on Twitter and YouTube making videos and doing tarot readings and stuff. That is the real Jupiterian person, because they're balancing. They are balancing. I'm messing up. Balancing both both worlds. They're, practicing their spiritual routines, and they are in the family life. You know, I can just keep going on and on. You can't see a real Jupiterian person, you can't be in no family. You can't have a wife and kids and then you just abandon her to go on some pilgrimage several times a year. You just can't abandon your family to go to your guru and live with him or her for several months or several years to build a better relationship with God. You just can't abandon your family and your wife's problems and the kids' problems to just go in the basement and meditate to align your chakras and all that stuff. It's either you committed to one or you committed to the other, and it's hard to do both. And I'm gonna try to stop making so many examples because I can list a million examples for why Jupiter does good in the 4th house and why it's hard to balance both of the worlds. So what exactly is Jupiter doing when it goes into the 4th house? Well, some of Jupiter in the 4th house, they could have came from a great household, potentially 2-parent household. They could have had a nice house in general, great living conditions. They probably didn't really have to struggle or want for nothing. These people don't have to be rich, but they probably was good middle class people. They didn't have to struggle like everyone else. They had a good, strong, solid foundation in their home life. They was just secured and provided for. The household was blessed and protected. Another thing, you could have came from a large family, but I'm mainly talking about the indoor dwellings. But you could have had, a lot of siblings, but mainly, like I said, you could have just had nice homes, nice living arrangements, a nice 2-parent household possibly. Jupiter can represent laws because, religion is basically man-made laws based upon your strong belief system. Your Jupiter, that preacher, is preaching and speaking about things that it strongly identifies with, that it strongly believes in. So in the 4th house, Jupiter, you could have had a household where your parents or mom or dad, whatever, they could have had, strong, they could have had strong rules. You could have had, a strong, orderly household where they could have, enforced a lot of rules on you potentially. And if that's not the case, then you could have came from a household where there was a lot of value and wisdom instilled in you. Your mother-like figure could have instilled a whole lot of value and wisdom and knowledge in you. Your mother could be very spiritual and religious herself. Like I said, your mom could have been a teacher, and when you was in school, you're someone who likely, your intellect gravitates more so towards the Jupiterian things, naturally, the philosophical, spiritual things. You probably dozed off. Well, yeah, Jupiter doesn't really represent formative education. So I'm going to just trash this example that I was about to give. Because you can do good in school and have Jupiter in the 4th house. You got to look at other placements. But, you're just naturally way more inclined to wanting to learn about those spiritual type things. And you could probably do a whole lot of reading at home. And you probably just absorb and learn a whole lot more in solitude or comfortable home-like environments. Another thing you can see with Jupiter in the 4th house is that this person, they could desire to want to take the knowledge and wisdom that they've acquired and learned at home. Because like I said, you can these people, they can get in touch with God or connect with God and, probably at home, through reading and just sitting and reflecting and just thinking about God. I don't want to just say indoor dwellings, because of course you can connect with God in church. And I don't want to just say in school, but in your own little private sanctuary, in your own little household, you might just read a lot of books on spiritual religious things. You might you might just feel just connected to God in your solitude, in your place of comfort and whatnot. And you would want to take the knowledge that you acquired, the knowledge and wisdom instilled in you in your home life, and you want to take it and share it with the 10th house, because the 4th house is the opposite of the 10th house. You would want to take your knowledge and share it with the world, potentially. You would probably want to make an impact on the world with the knowledge that you have with your Jupiter in the 4th house. Trying to see if there's anything else I can say with Jupiter in the 4th house. Possibly, when this person has their own household of their own, have their own family, they would likely instill wisdom in their household. They would maybe have some time of the day dedicated to meditating and spiritual routines, and have a nice room or altar for their ancestors or for their deity. These people will instill and incorporate likely some type of spiritual routine within their household. The spouse and the kids, they would probably have wisdom and spiritual religious knowledge instilled in them in the household. And that's sort of the shadow and dark side potentially of Jupiter in the 4th house, because too much of a strict religious household can make the kid or whatever want to break out of the house. It's like, I hate going home. I'm tired of going to Bible study. I'm tired of talking about God or these religious spiritual things 24/7. I want to do other things. I love God too, but I don't want to talk about these things all the time. That could be the negative side of Jupiter in the 4th house. You could have came from a household where religion and Jehovah's Witness and Jewish and being Jew or Christian or whatever was beat in your head, and you either gravitated towards it, or you're just so sick of it because it was just beat into you and you don't want to learn about it no more. Or you accept it and you'll pass that down to your wife and you'll pass that down to your kids. You'll just beat them down with your strong religious routines. For example, Muhammad Ali is a perfect example. He doesn't have this placement, but I'm using him as an example. He was a boxer, as everyone knows that, but he was a very religious man. He was a Muslim, and he wanted his wives or little girlfriends or whatever to adhere to his religious Muslim customs. And I believe his first wife, she wasn't with that. And that's like an example that you can see. These people can really turn the household into, an ashram, a spiritual temple. They'll practice their belief system in the household and can instill it on the household. And that can just potentially ruin the marriage and ruin the household with the kids, because the kids might not be feeling it. The wife might get tired of it. But like I said, this is an extreme example of it. Jupiter is known as the heavy one because, it's hard to be a religious, spiritual person or a spiritual, philosophical person who might be renounced from the material world. It's a heavy burden. It's heavy to be spiritual and incorporate that into the regular world. It's a whole lot of responsibilities, a whole lot of things that come with it, depending on how dedicated and serious you are with it. But that is it for my lengthy explanation of Jupiter in the 4th house. And I hope that this gave you some great insight and clarity on Jupiter in the 4th house. Thank you for watching.